It's been more than 20 years since Super Mario World came out on the SNES and is still making it into the news even to this day. This past week, a data miner by the name of the Brickster was able to restore the entire soundtrack from the game to how it was originally meant to be heard before it was compressed. So today, let's take a look at exactly how he was able to pull off such a feat, and then compare a couple of the restored tracks to the original compressed files to see how they sound. But before we dive into that, welcome to Ogle's channel. Thank you so much for watching today. If you haven't already clicked the subscribe button down below, be sure and do that now for your latest in gaming news, content, giveaways, reviews, and much, much more. But let's get back to where this restored Super Mario World soundtrack came from. Now, first off, SNES soundtracks are generally recorded on various instruments such as synthesizers, and it didn't sound like the 16-bit sounds that we have so much nostalgia for, but they sounded more like, well, regular instruments or regular sounds. But the individual instrument sound files were then compressed significantly to fit onto 64 kilobyte chips. When sound files are compressed to such a high degree like this, the sound files lose a great bit of the original flavor. It's like when you take a 1080p video and reduce it down to 144p. Yes, the original idea is still there, but something is greatly lost in the transition here. SNES soundtracks were the same way. The original ideas were there in the compressed files, but something was greatly lost in that transition. So how did data miner the Brickster restore these original compressed files to their former glory? Well, our story starts back in July of 2020 when there was a massive leak of about a dozen or so older Nintendo games, and Super Mario World was one of those. But this massive leak included all kinds of cool stuff. They included like an old man version of Yoshi from Super Mario World. They included a lot of early versions of Super Mario 64 levels. They also included some unused Pokemon sprites. But as the months went by, more and more stuff started coming out of this leak that came from back in July. And the Brickster, as he was going through it months later, he noticed that within the source code of Super Mario World, that had all of the instruments labeled within the soundtrack for the individual sound files. And so in referring to how he figured out which files were which and how they lined up, he said the following. For example, one sound was called Fantasy in the source files. Knowing what I knew of Kondo's setup during the time of Mario World, I deduced this must mean the Fantasia patch from the Roland D550, a synth he owned at the time. But once the Brickster was able to line up which instruments lined up with all the sound files, the Brickster and his friends were able to recreate the entire Super Mario World soundtrack in the way that it was always meant to be heard. With the original instruments lined up in the exact same way, we were finally able to hear what the original composer wanted us to hear before it was all compressed down of Super Mario World. So we're going to take just a second here. We're going to compare the originals and the new ones. So the first one we're going to take a look at is going to be the title screen for Super Mario World. We'll listen to the original first, and we'll listen to the restored version second. Obviously, there's a big difference in those two files. Let's listen to another one. This is going to be the original overworld theme, followed by the restored overworld theme. You can tell that these files are cleaner and crisper than we've ever heard before, and it's awesome to finally hear what the original composer wanted us to hear when we were playing Super Mario World. However, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I actually enjoy the compressed files more. I know the new ones sound amazing, I know it's what the composer wanted, but when I hear the original compressed files, that takes me back to my childhood. That's the sound of Super Mario World for me. And even though I know it's not what the composer intended, that is Super Mario World to me, those compressed files. And so those will always be my personal favorite. However, what do you guys think? Do you enjoy hearing the new, originally restored Super Mario World sound files? Or do you prefer the original compressed files that we all grew up with? Let me know in the comment section down below. And be sure to look in the description as well. I'll have links to some of the songs here that we've listened to, as well as some of the more from the Brickster's page. check his page out. He has some great content, and give him a look up. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure and like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, go out there, find a great game to play, and just simply have a great rest of the day.